Greta says she's sorry. Whatever.
How dare you? How dare you?
So Greta Thunberg apologizes for against the wall comment. Now, understand when this first came out, I knew English was her second language. And I was thinking, it's like, you know what? Possibly. This could be a lost in translation thing. I was right, obviously, because most often than not, I'm correct on these assumptions. But I didn't want to come out and just go, how dare you? Because that's what she does, and that's kind of old hat by now. This is from the Globe and Mail. Now, again, she is Swedish, and believe it or not, a lot of Swedes, their second language is English, but it's also is a lot of the times it is German. There's a couple of other different languages. It's not just English as their second language, but most do pick up English as their second language because even though Swedish is their language, they don't necessarily speak it all the time. Obviously, this is not for everyone. I've been to Sweden once in my life when I was like 16. My brother went to school there, I think for junior year of high school. We have some family friends there, and they speak English pretty well. Really well, actually, to be honest. Let's just go over the story. You see, her handlers, and she does have handlers, they need to refine her message a little bit because, you see, the way she talks, because at first it was just climate change. Now it's climate change with social justice and, racial justice intertwined with climate change. I don't know what her message is getting warped, if you will. I got two articles here. They're both the same ones, but I want to see how far the NBC one goes away from the Global Mail. Because the Global Mail, I think, is leftist Canadian. So let's just go over this real quick. It says, teenage climate activist Greta Thunberg has apologized for saying politicians should be put up against the wall after critics took it to mean she was advocating violence. Yes. If you didn't know that, English was her second language and she didn't understand the translations, for what we'll see here in a second, against the wall in Sweden means something different than the connotation in English. The 16-year-old Swede made the comment in a speech to the young activists in the Italian city of Turin on Friday. Thunberg later said she was making a literal translation from Swedish, there we go, in which the expression means to put someone on the spot with tough questions. Not putting them against the wall and shot by leftist totalitarians who were most likely Greta's handlers. Quote, that's what happens when you improvise speeches in a second language. But of course I apologize if anyone misunderstood this, Thunberg wrote on Twitter on Saturday. See, we didn't really misunderstood it, Greta. We understand that you're very passionate, or maybe your parents are very passionate and putting it off on to you. But regardless, you got to understand here is that we know where this goes. You're a leftist. We know this. That's my opinion. And I get it. And don't say, well, she's 16. Don't criticize her. It's like, well, you know what? Her handler should have thought that before. They put a 16-year-old in a contentious problem or issue, dare I say, about climate change. If you're going to put a 16-year-old up there, expect a little bit of flack, if you will. Thunberg told the crowd in turn that the world leaders were running away from their responsibilities to fight climate change. Quote, we have to make sure they cannot do that, she said. We will make sure that we put them against the wall and they will have to do their job and to protect our futures. Okay. You see, in the past, or even in the present, if you will, when you put someone against the wall, forcing them to do something, and if they don't do it, well, I guess you know where the people who've got the armaments, if you will put you against the wall and kind of end your life. The expression putting someone against the wall in Swedish describes a situation when someone's forced to address difficult questions or a difficult situation. But here we go. The leftist paper comes and shows its true colors. But some right-wing voices. Oh, but Greta's not a left-wing voice? Yeah, okay. On social media, interpreted her comment as a call for violence against politicians. Not only politicians, but people like myself who disagree vehemently with her, dare I say, narrative. Thunberg tweeted that she and the youth movement she inspired is against all forms of violence. Until, you're for violence against people you don't like. It goes without saying, but I say it anyway, she wrote. Notice how nowhere in this article they talk about her being left-wing. Until they talk about her critics, then they're far-right or right-leaning. Notice how that happens. Here's the NBC one. Madrid. She apologized for saying politicians be against the wall after critics took it to mean she was advocating violence. Again, like I said, she's not advocating violence yet. But just wait a little while. It may not happen tomorrow, may not happen in a couple years, may not happen in 10. But if she could get away with it, believe you and me, she would advocate violence. But for as of right now, she's not going to, because it doesn't fit the narrative. She's going to try the peaceful way first until, she has to get violent, or her people, her handlers, her sycophants get violent. Then, it's okay. As I said, this is the literal translation in Swedish. Talk about that. Thunberg told the crowd in turn that world leaders are running away from responsibility. Said that because the expression putting against the wall in Swedish describes a situation putting force to address difficult situations. But notice how, again, who wrote this article? But some right-wing voices on social media interpret her comment as a call to violence. But some right-wing... By the Associated Press. Do not these news organizations do their own journalism? I guess we just leave it to the Associated Press to describe people who disagree with Greta as being right-wing or far-right, or people who are just bullying a well-intentioned, if you will, Greta Thunberg, a teenager, and how dare you criticize her? Well, I will criticize her. She needs to understand that words mean a lot. Words matter. You just can't go out and say, I'm going to put somebody against the wall. What are we supposed to think if we disagree with you? You want to hurt us because we disagree with you? Again, give it time. These far leftist Marxist climatologists and climate scientists and climate activists will eventually get around to violence. But as far as right now, no, they disavow violence until, it fits their narrative. Laszlo out.